Okay. Now there's a new one. I'll have to look up and see what that is. What transcription might that be? Okay, so we've got track 3A. Now, initially I had 7 tracks, and I realized track 3 was all the functional, the G's and the GGs, which means all the M18 items and all the GG items all in one deck. And it became a very huge, large deck. And I thought, well, that's not a problem. We'll just fly through those. And then I realized we really probably shouldn't fly through them. We may skip, but we're not going to fly. So I did break them down into 2 separate tracks, the 3A and 3B. Oh, I'm seeing this transcription. I got to knock it off. It's on my screen. I'm like, what is that? It's like typing as I go along. That's frightening. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about section E, F, and G. The good news is you're like, oh my God, 3 sections. The good news is a lot of this stuff we have seen before. Most of this is not new to us. So I'm just going to be going through the finer points of, what you want to be sure you're looking at as you look at these familiar items. So M1740 is here in section E, the behavior section. So we know 1740, that's the cognitive, behavioral, and psych symptoms item. Nothing new and crazy there. It's still the same old, 5-day look back period, because it says what's been demonstrated at least once a week. But here's the things we want to be sure of when we're looking at this with the guidance, because everyone loves those choices 1 and 2, memory deficit and impaired decision making. It's like they don't read anything further in the line. They just see those and they say, I know what that means.
Conferencing center. Please
and they answer
conference ID followed by pound.
I have no idea what that is. And they just answer based on that. And when I say they, I mean, I'm talking about the clinicians here who's filling out the OASIS. But we want to be sure that the codes 1 and 2 are being used appropriately. So code 1, do they have a memory loss?
You're the meeting organizer. Press star now.
I have no idea what's going on, but please stop. Do they need supervision for safety? Your code 2. This is someone that smokes while they're on oxygen, forgets or refuses to use their assistive device. They're non-compliant with their meds or the treatment regime. They won't check their blood sugars or follow a prescribed diet. All those bad things, right? Your ornery child. But this person does not comprehend or appreciate the consequences of their actions. And that's the real caveat to being able to score someone as a 2. I need everyone on mute, please. For the Q&As, it is not the intent of M1740
Cannot hear you if you can hear me.
I think you're on mute, Arlen.
All right. What was the last thing you heard?
We can hear you now.
Okay, what was the last thing you heard from me?
Number 2 is not intended to get those people that are
okay,
doing
so
this
someone
by
hit
choice.
a mute all, apparently, I guess, and just shut everybody down, including me. So yeah, I don't know why we're getting all these pings coming in. That's never happened before. So teams. Okay, so number 2. So again, I'll say this is the person when the clinicians are out there. They're patients smoking while they're on oxygen. They're forgetting or refusing to use their assistive device. They're non-compliant, whether they're meds or the treatment, whatever they're supposed to be doing, they're not, right? They won't check their blood sugars. They won't follow a prescribed diet. I mean, how many times as anybody worked in the field, you'd go out to see your diabetic patient and they're sitting there with a Sunkist and a bag of Cheetos. You're like, no, we've talked about this. And they just put a big grin on their face with their orange fingers, right? This is that person only if they do not comprehend or appreciate the consequences of their actions. Are you aware that if you do this, this is going to happen? And they just look at you, deer in the headlights, not a clue, right? They don't appreciate or comprehend the consequences. I'm never going to get through this. For the Q&As, it's not the intent of M1740 to report the non-adherence or risky choices made by cognitively intact patients, and has it there in that Q&A that says that. It's in that second sentence. It's not the intent to report these of people that know what they're doing. So this is just, if you just have that stubborn child, that's not this person. This is the one, the Alzheimer's patient that doesn't get it. Okay, so we want to make sure that when you're reviewing records and you see someone's checked off a 2, is there some cognitive thing going on with this patient that would make them not be aware of their choices here? Why non-compliant is not a good thing. M1745, the frequency of the destructive behavior systems. So this doesn't have to be tailing right off of M1740. This can look at those behaviors that you might have alluded to in M1740, but it's also anything else that is going on with this patient. And this says reported or observed. So this could be something that the clinician might have seen or something that was told to them by the patient's family. So this includes behaviors such that in the clinician's judgment may jeopardize the patient's safety and their well-being. So this could include things such as sundowning, wandering, agitation, aggression, combativeness, getting lost in familiar places. So, when we look at the item, it says, reported or observed anything that's injurious to themselves or others or jeopardizes the personal safety. And it has all these, timeline choices. So if the clinician had marked off something in M1740, some behavior there, and if we look back at 1740, the time frame was that they demonstrated that particular behavior that was chosen at least once a week. So when you come here and you're using that as your scale to go against M1745, at least once a week has to be accounted here mathematically for when is this happening? Well, it's going to be several times a month then if it's happening at least once a week. Does that make sense? All right. So again, so this is the kind of thing where now, because they're not directly linked together, you might have something in 1740 and nothing in 1745. That's okay. So it all comes down to, is this going to be jeopardizing their personal safety or the well-being of their caregiver? So where these might, if you didn't have something in 1740, let's talk about this patient. You've got someone that refuses to use their walker. And they know they're supposed to use it. I don't want to use it. It makes me look old. It's like, okay, well, let's see how you feel about healing up from a hip fracture. That'll make you look old too, but okay. I don't want to use my assistive device. It makes me look old. They know what's going to happen. I know I'm going to fall. I promise you I'm not going to fall. But yes, because I don't use my walker, I could fall. I get that. You don't have to tell me that anymore. 1745 is where we can account for this patient, though. We couldn't get them in 1740 because they know what they're doing. But in 1745, we can get them because this behavior is injurious to themselves. All right, so that's where you can account for that type of temper tantrum. M1100 is in section F. So that's all that was section E, those two items, 1740 and 1745. Woo, big section, right? So section F is preferences for customary routine activities. I couldn't even begin to tell you what that actually means. That's just someone go, what do we call this section? How about, yeah, okay. So they threw M1100 in here, the patient's living situation. So this we know, only one box is chosen. You start with row A, figure out what their living situation is, and then the clinician goes over to figure out the availability of assistance, when is that time frame that someone's available. And the caveat to all that with that person being available is, are they capable of helping out? When my mom had her knee done, her husband at the time had Parkinson's. He would have been more than happy to be helpful. The problem was he could not be helpful. He was stuck in a recliner, right? He had his own aide that came in to dress him every day. So he's like, yeah, I can help her with her socks. We're like, Bob, no, you can't. So yes, he would have been more than happy to be, it would have been row A, obviously my mom lived with someone else in the home, her husband, and the clinician was more than happy to put down round the clock assistance. I'm like, no, she does not have assistance around the clock. She has assistance when my sister, because they're out in New York at the time, when she's able to come by a couple days a week. That's her availability of assistance. So you can't be looking at Bob, because I went out there to see what was going on. They weren't happy. So yeah, there might be a caregiver available 24/7, but is that caregiver capable of being a caregiver? So that's the caveat to that. Talked about that. M2102 is also in this section, right? We have the two different versions. The start of care just has that item F, supervision and safety. And then the discharge is the pop quiz of the A, C, D, and the F still comes around. And that's just the kind of thing where, anyone on the clinical side has to be sure to, look at those discharge items at the start of care to make sure there's somewhere in their plan of care if it's something that has to be attended to, so that they don't come up and it's like, oh no, wait, the caregiver still needs some training on this. Gosh, I wish I had thought about that 60 days ago. So yeah, I don't like when they pull these pop quizzes at the time of discharge. I don't think it's fair. But with this one, we still struggle with the M2102F. When I say we still struggle, I mean our reviewers still struggle with this. This item is only about the patient that has a cognitive impairment or some type of mental health issue that pertains to their need to have someone else in the home to make sure that they're safe. So with that, if you have a patient that does not have any impairments and they don't have any mental health issues, they should be a 0 on this because they have no needs in this area. So we just want to make sure that we're only looking at the cognitive impaired population. Yeah, that's just more of a guidance thing on that. Anyone that is doing discharges, TEDHOs are dressing considerations in our ADL dressing items, the M1820 and M1810, your upper and lower body dressings. But for M2102, they're considered medical treatments. I can't explain, I don't know. So they're not, they would not be considered in section A, ADL assistance, which is where your dressing items would be, right? Yeah, no, we cannot have consistency. We won't stand for that. So they are medical treatments, which is item D for M2102. So that's just the thing about TEDHOs. So just remember, for those of you that are doing discharges and you have to look through this, this is, if anything, needs help in the categories there, you're going to be addressing it towards. It's not like the majority of the items or anything like that. If anything needs help, you have to look at how they're doing either by themselves or the caregiver, how they're handling it. And this just talks about, specifically what's in there, so you can review that on your own. Ooh, Slido! We've got Slido! Can't back up a slide. So it has the code to come in at 3777359 to join us at slido.com. And Haley White wins the fast finger contest for typing. Halfway there, give it a little bit more. Get closer to the majority, and you guys can still keep coming on. Slowing down a little here. Okay, slow down. So the patient forgets to use their walker when ambulating due to dementia, thereby sustaining numerous falls. For M2102F, the clinician coded 1, non-agency caregiver currently provides assistance. Is this correct? So just the 3 answers there. So choose your answer. All right, so a lot of you like too that the caregiver needs training. So here's the thing. We really don't have enough. I know, I'm sorry, that was a trick question. There's really not enough here to answer this appropriately. We don't know how the caregiver is doing. We don't know if the caregiver needs training. We just don't know when this is happening. So sorry, it was a trick question, but anyone that's ever taken the OASIS exams or anything, sometimes, that one about there's not enough information to answer. It's like, yeah, that might actually be the one that you want to be looking for. But it's just saying that they're not they're falling because they're not using their device, but we don't know how that caregiver has been handling things. If they said that, the caregiver, refuses to be involved, or the caregiver doesn't know where to stand or how to supervise the patient with the walker, that'd be one thing, but there's just nothing that says anything about the caregiver here. So sorry, trick question. The other ones won't be trick questions, I promise. I'm sorry. You guys are good. All right. So this is just, again, for those of you on the discharge side, that all these items, have a lot of tie-ins back to the different M items within the OASIS. So the ADL assistance, there's all the ADL items. Med administration, we're talking about the N2020 and 2030, your medication items. Do they have oxygen? Do they have inhalers? Again, D is about wound care and the TED hose. And F is, also look at all those behavioral items, the M1700, 1710, 40, and 45. See what's all going on. There's a whole lot of different items that come into play, and they all serve towards risk adjustment towards this particular item. So I just want to make sure that everything seems to make sense together. All right, then we're going to go into section G, functional status. So within the new OASIS E, we have section G, the functional status, and section GG, which is, guess what? The GG items. Yeah. All right, so G is our functional status, and just a reminder of what help is. Help can be supervision, can be assistance. Your supervision is basically your hands-off type of things, which includes your verbal cueing. Your assistance is now you're physically getting involved. It's touching, contact, guarding, participating in a task. So I like to use this. Think of help as interfering in the task. If that clinician did not do anything at all, would the patient have been able to safely complete the task? So watch for those ones that, we've got some agencies that just love to mark everyone as independent because they have no caregiver in the home. Like, no, that's not what independent means. Alone is not the same as independent. When someone is being marked as being independent, the thought process behind that means that the patient is able to consistently complete a given task without assistance of any kind whenever they choose to do that task without any safety concerns. That means that the clinicians are not needed to ever address this again. I really hesitate to imagine how many of our homebound patients are actually independent in a lot of their tasks. Yeah, they're going to be independent in some. They could probably, get themselves to and from the toilet. Yeah, I can see some things as being independent. All of them, no, and not still be considered homebound. Yeah, there's going to be those outliers that were just in for IV treatment, whatever it is, and they're considered homebound because they can't leave the house per the provider. There's going to be outliers, but for the most part, our little seniors have issues, and I don't think they would really be considered independent, which means you are safe at doing whatever the heck you want, whenever you want, at all times. So this is something that, if anyone is noticing with their agencies that the clinicians are struggling a little to assess ADLs and IADLs, you might want to like print off this slide, what the clinician should focus on when they're assessing ADLs and IADLs. And you see, it all comes down to safely. What can the patient do safely? What assistance, whether it's a device or a human, is needed so they can do something safely? What does the environment have to be like for that safety? On answering the items, how was the task performed? You always start that, hey, was the task performed? How much human assistance was needed in order to get it completed? And what devices were needed in order to get it completed? And of course, when we say completed, we're talking in a safe manner as well. So this might be something, if you see you have struggling agencies, you might want to kick them this slide. Just a reminder, Fido is an assistive device. He's not assistance. Sorry, he is a device. Under PDGM, we talk about these functional items just because they're so important towards the financial side. It's the only items from the OASIS that go towards payment. So the M1033, the risk of hospitalization, we know is the one that's included in this whole thing as far as going towards the functional impairment level. And then we have our M18 items. The only thing missing here is M1845, toileting hygiene, and M1870, feeding, which is now in another section. It's no longer with these others. It has been dropped over to nutrition, which makes sense. All right, so that's why we're always so focused on, especially when the QAs come on, we want to make sure that these are being looked at and marked appropriately because they go towards reimbursement. And of course, they go towards outcomes. So those are the two big things that help an agency to survive, right? The money and the outcomes. We know what, the grooming is. And remember, assistance is assistance from another person in this item, which could be verbal cueing. Doesn't mean I have to have my hands on you and hand you your toothbrush or whatever this case may be. It could just be me standing there in the doorway going, no, 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 toothpaste on the toothbrush, then you brush your teeth, pop, right? So verbal cueing reminders counts, but that is assistance. 1810 and 1820, right? They look pretty much identical, just talking about different bodies of clothing. So just the rules on that. The majority rule doesn't refer to the individual steps you take. Like I have to do this, 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 just to get my hoodie on. No, I put on a hoodie. I put on a pair of pants, a pair of underwear. So it refers to the majority of items, the majority of tasks that are being done, not the steps taken within each task to put that on. So we just want to make sure, if someone's having balance issues, how are they being scored with their addressing items? Is this person, because they're having balance issues, have they decided they're going to address sitting in a chair, or are they still trying to stand up and fall over like me in the morning, trying to put two legs through one side of my sweatpants, It's just me. Okay. All right. Elastic bandages, right? Your ACE wraps, worn for support and compression, are considered a dressing item, but if they're there to just hold a bandage on, then they're part of a wound dressing and they're not considered as dressing items. So you just need to know that ACE wrap that's on there. What's it actually on there for? Is it for compression or is it just to hold a gauze in place? We know that prosthetics and orthotics and other support devices are considered dressing items. Oh, I don't, it's like it hits that one slide and then it just bam, just jumps into the next one. So we've got another Slido coming up. Question. All right. The clinical assessment indicates the patient has chronic back pain, COVID brain fog. They easily fatigue. They had a recent fall due to their knee giving out. The M1820 lower body dressing was coded as a 1, that the patient is able to dress without assistance. Are you going to let that one slide? Yes or no? All right. I'm either beating the slide or you guys are still coming on or it's not working. Either way, there we go. Another click of a button. All right, so maybe it was the way I worded the question. I told you it wasn't gonna be a trick question. Are you gonna let that one slide? No. You know, because all those issues, chronic back pain, they have brain fog, they're tiring easily, they're falling, right? Should they be dressing with some type of assistance? Yeah, or teach them how to sit in a chair and dress or something. But until that teaching happens, this patient is not safe and they should not be scored as a 1. They should have assistance. Talking to my computer. Bathing is still here. Haven't made it go away. Those are just the different levels of bathing. You know, the different key indicators for you. So the difference between 2 and 3, there's still, 2 and 3, they're still either in the shower or the tub. 2 is I have intermittent assistance. 3 is I have to have constant assistance, whether that be supervision, just someone sitting there, on the commode in the bathroom while, grandma's there in the tub or on the shower chair, I'm reading Good Housekeeping, but I'm there, I'm keeping an eye out. I don't have to physically be touching, but it's constant something is your score 3, as opposed to 2, which is your intermittent something. If they can't bathe in a shower or tub for whatever reason that might be, whether it's fear, behavioral, environmental, or they're medically restricted, the physician has said no showers, then they're going to be a code 4 or 5. And 4 is I'm doing a bird bath independently by myself, or code 5 is I'm doing a bird bath, but I need some assistance for some reason. Code 6 is someone that is totally dependent in bathing. Doesn't matter where it's happening. It could be a bed bath. It could be sitting, in a chair in the bathroom. It could be they're actually in the shower or tub. Maybe they have one of those nice little bath lifts. It doesn't matter where it's happening. All that matters is the patient is really not doing anything to help out at all. They might lift their arm a little bit or move a leg so you can, wash, but they're really not helping, not effectively at all. So that's your 6. That's your totally dependent person. 1840, your toilet transferring. Just some, we talk about in the absence of a toilet in the home, because we do have homes where there's no toilet. You need to determine, can they use a bedside commode? And if you're going to mark, if the clinician's going to have marked that one off, make sure there is indeed a bedside commode. They can't assess someone as being able to use a device that is not there in the home, right? If they cannot use a bedside commode, can they use a bedpan or urinal independently? If they can't do that, code 4 dependent might be your only choice here, where they're unable to use that bedside commode or bedpan urinal, or none of this equipment is in the home that will allow for assessment. It's like, you're pretty sure they're going to be able to use a bedside commode, but you know what? It's not there. So you can't say that they're okay with it because it's not there. So that has to be that code 4. It's like that default of, you don't hit any of these other criteria, so you have to be a 4. So we have no other choices to give you. M1845, the toileting hygiene is still here. And just a reminder, in that score 2 of M1845 talks about adjusting clothing. Look back, how did the patient do? How were they scored on M1820, which is the ability to dress their lower body. If they were dinged on that lower body, especially as a 2, say someone must help them, what items were they talking about? Were those items that they need help on the same items that are involved in the toileting hygiene section? We're talking about your underoos and your pants, right? So just what you want to check just to see, does everything kind of make sense there together? M1850, you're transferring. That's score 1. Able to transfer with minimal human assistance or with the use of an assistive device. Which means if you need minimal human assistance and an assistive device, you cannot be score 1. Or if you need more than minimal human assistance, I'm sorry, you cannot be a score 1 either. All right, so let's just be sure that, we look at this whole transfer task. The whole thing is actually quite the process. It includes transferring from a supine position in bed to sitting up on the side of the bed, getting up, and either using a stand pivot, or a sliding board transfer, or a squat pivot. Maybe someone's helping them, or swinging the hips, to another chair, then getting up, going back to the bed, and lying back down. That is the complete transfer process. Not just sitting in one chair, show me how you sit in this other chair. That's not the transfer process. Bedfast means they are confined to the bed due to a medical restriction, or they're unable to tolerate being out of bed. So the patient that is hoyered into a recliner or a wheelchair is not bedfast. They'll probably tread fast, but they are not bedfast. Bedfast is also not the person that just lays there and said, I refuse to get out of bed. No, I just want to lay here. I am comfortable right here. I can see the TV perfectly from this position in bed. If they're able to get out of bed and there's no reason they're not out of bed, that's a different story. So that's different from being bedfast, where you are either physically or confined by medical restriction. That's just the breakdown of the codes. So we have someone hoarded into recliner, right? Or wheelchair is not bedfast. And again, look at how this is compared to GG0170C, which is lying to sitting on the side of the bed, because that is one of the tasks involved in transferring. Transferring actually takes up about 5 different, I think I put them all up on a slide once. There's like 5 different GG items that go into the transferring task of M1850. So one of the EMRs apparently is doing things in E that they're going to have a lot of their items in a side by side, and I'm just dying to see how they handle this one, because we always like to say how the M18 and the GG items don't really talk very nicely to each other, and this is one where M1850 talks to about 5 different GG items. Slido, why does that do that? So we have Slido. His name's in this time. All righty. So the PT assessment indicates the patient required moderate assistance to perform a stand pivot transfer from their bed to the wheelchair. The PT assigned M1850 as code 1, transfers with minimal human assistance or assistive device. Is this correct? As they used to say to us all the time in grad school, yeah, 50-50 shot of getting this one right. Let's have everybody checked in here. To have a leaderboard that goes up I can watch. All right. Well, very good. But yes, it's that moderate assistance, right? That's what got you. Like, nope, can't do that. Moderate assistance cannot be a 1. I don't know why they picked out Joy. I mean, obviously, a lot of you, I think they just got Joy because she's got the shortest time. But congratulations, Joy. All right, M1860, ambulation and locomotion, still here. Right. So your ambulatory patient, code 0 and 1, 2 and 3 would be applicable. And just remember that code 2 says they need a human assistance at all times in order to safely ambulate. Are they at falls risk? What's going on with them? But it's one of those things that if they have assistance, then they're safe walking with them. You're going to be code 3. If they have assistance and they're still not safe, they still can't be deemed safe by any stretch of the imagination, that's not going to be code 3. And we'll talk about that in I think on the next slide. So for your non-ambulatory but not bedfast patients, this is your code 4 and 5, where code 4 is they're chair fast and they're unable to ambulate, but they're able to wheel themselves independently. They don't need assistance at all with that wheelchair. And that could be either a manual wheelchair or a power chair, or whatever they're using. Your code 5 is they're chair fast and they're unable to ambulate or wheel themselves. They need assistance of some type with using that wheelchair, right? And while some might say they have the power wheelchair, you have no problems with that power wheelchair. You know, as clinicians, we will look around the house and we see that all the door frame moldings have been removed. Or there's, puncture marks in the drywall about 1 foot off the ground where the footrest went through the drywall. So, they might not be all that safe with that wheelchair, when they start their power chair up to the grandkids and the cats go running, right? Are they really safe with it? And that's something for the clinician to parse out. Obviously, you can't figure that out, but hopefully, they're coming up with a difference why it's a 4 or a 5, what's going on with that patient. So like I said, if you have that patient that even if they're getting some assistance while they're walking, if you just cannot say that this is safe by any stretch of the imagination, they can't be a 3. You're like, yeah, but they're not chair fast because there's no wheelchair in the home. Yeah, but this is one of those, we only have so many options. If we had an option for every answer we wanted, there'd be, a score of 0 through 100 through every single item. So the best we can say is we're going to default to, a 4 or 5, depending on their ability to maneuver a wheelchair. And if there is not a wheelchair in the home to test them on, the default code is 5. We can't use 6 because that's bedfast and they're not bedfast, right? So the best you can say is a 5 because you will be getting a wheelchair into that house. And by the time you discharge them, they're going to be either a 4 or a 5, unless they get so miraculously so much better and they're back to walking in a safer manner. And that is that. All right, so do we have any questions at all? Stop the recording.